It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. You sign up for free, you get a free audio book, and it helps to support the show. Now, tonight we are live on cjmarsradio.com and 365 Live, hazyradio.com. And, we were supposed to be, tonight, we were supposed to be live for the first time, simulcasting on awakeradio.us, awakeradio.uk, 1800 online, and shizazradio.com. But what happened was we had some technical difficulties, and we couldn't get that quite worked out. So we'll be playing the replays on those stations like we normally do on Sunday nights. And next week we'll be live on Awake Radio US, UK, 1800 online, and shizazradio.com. But for tonight, we'll just be replaying on them. But tonight, we're also on WTRU Radio as a podcast. And then throughout the week, you can find us on ParaX Radio, Saturday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Penny Entertainment on blogtalkradio.com on Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And then don't forget, we're on Firehorse Radio Wednesday nights and Shake and Wake Radio on Thursday nights. So pretty much you can catch us any time of the day, 24 hours a day. A lot of these stations, too, they replay us throughout the day and stuff like that, so you can check in there. If you need your Opperman Report fix, you just tune in, you could find us there. Now, next week, barring any technical gremlins that we may be experiencing, we'll be live simulcast on PSN Radio, okay? And for a big deal is that PSN will also be carrying the after show along with CJ Mars Radio. So we'll be having two stations live carrying the whole big giant 4-hour show that pretty much wipes me out every week. Now tonight, our guest is Lee Lamb, and she's an author, and she was also a school teacher, and she's written these books about Oak Island and about her family, the Restall family, okay? And she's the author of the book Oak Island Obsession, the Restall Story, and Oak Island Family, the Restall Hunt for Buried Treasure. And it's a really fascinating story. She's a very fascinating woman. And you can go to my blog, the Opperman Report, and you can find links to her books and a little bio there we have up on her, a beautiful picture of the beautiful Lee Lamb. And we're going to be with her in just a minute. Just want to make a couple more announcements. Next week, we have Captain Ray Lewis. And he's a Philadelphia police captain, and he retired, and he started joining the Occupy Wall Street movement. And how he's down there in Ferguson, he's protesting the Mike Brown murder, and he retired in disgust over police corruption and abuse of power and abuse of force. And now he's facing all kinds of death threats and threats against his pension and his insurance due to his attending these protests in his police captain's uniform. So we're going to have him next week, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then after that, we have Catherine McDonald, who's the wife of Jeffrey McDonald. He's the Army doctor that was convicted of murdering his family down there in North Carolina, Fort Bragg, about 30 years ago. The guy's been in prison like 30 years. Now, she's going to be telling us about all the new evidence in that case and all the new information and why we may be seeing the release from prison of Dr. McDonald. And she's doing our show 2 weeks from now. And then this Jeffrey McDonald story is going to be on the cover of People magazine, okay? And then they're coming back. She's going to come back for a second show. And I'll also be interviewing Jeffrey McDonald from prison. I won't be in prison. He's in prison. I'm going to be calling him from my office, and he'll be in prison talking to me over the prison phone. So don't think, well, maybe I will be in prison by then. Who knows? Okay, and we're also going to be, oh, by the way, hey, big news. But you know what? I'll make some more announcements after we get to the after show and later on during the show, because I got a lot of stuff going on. And we have a great guest. It's a fascinating story about Oak Island and buried treasure. You know, who can ask for more? But Lee, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, how are you, man?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, great. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the whole story about Oak Island and buried treasure and your family and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, there's not much to tell at the moment. I'm sitting in my apartment talking to you, and that's the most exciting thing that's happened to me in a very long time. And I'd really like to get on with telling your listeners about my family and more interesting things in my life right now. So
Okay.
Can we do it that way?
Well, let me ask you first of all, where do you live?
Oh, I'm living in Burlington, Ontario, Canada.
Okay, so you're up in Canada. Okay, you're up in there. How's the weather?
Oh, it's suddenly turned cold. We have to wear coats now, but we had snow and it vanished immediately.
Okay, that's not so bad. Okay, yeah, I'm in freezing cold Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh, really? I'm envious.
Yeah, well, it's cold for us because your blood thins out. During the summertime, if you're walking around 110 degrees, your blood thins out, so a little bit of cold, you feel cold.
Yeah, but it's a very energetic, exciting city.
It can be, and plus I love the desert. I love hiking out in the desert and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so then tell us about then, how do you want to get started? Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to assume that people know something about Oak Island because there's been a lot about it lately. There's a reality show, for instance, going right now, and there have been other shows on it, and there's been a lot of books on it. So most people know that there's a treasure buried on an island just off the coast of Nova Scotia. At the moment, you could walk there because they built a causeway between the island and the mainland. But something more than 200 years ago, somebody got the idea that there was a treasure on the island, and people came and dug for treasure, one company or consortium after another, and they found very inexplicable things on the island. For instance, all right, I'll just give you a one-time shot. A boy was walking on Oak Island in 1795, and he saw that part of the woods were a different height than the rest. The bushes and things looked like new growth at one particular part. And he saw an oak tree that had, from a broken off limb, was hanging a block and tackle. And under the block and tackle was an indentation in the earth. And he thought, wow, what can this be? So he went and got his two pals.
Let me ask you a question. How'd that kid get to the island? If you had to get there by boat?
Well, he rowed over.
Okay.
It's a really little, itty-bitty row to get to the island. And he thought, in one source that I read, it said he went there to go hunting. And there was very little population in Nova Scotia at that time. So, anyway, his three friends came over and they dug under this tree very excitedly, and at 2 feet down they came to some flagstones. And obviously this was something a person had put down, a man-made. And they continued to dig under it, and they realized that the earth they were digging up had been previously dug. And they were digging a hole that was about 13 feet in diameter, and that's like the size of your bedroom. And when they took all this earth out, and when you looked at the sides of the hole they had dug, there were pick marks and shovel marks in it, and it was hard clay that you couldn't dig easily. Mm. But they came to a layer of oak logs, and they pulled them out. Very excited. It's got to be a treasure. There was lots of talk about pirates and treasures in those days because the governor of the territory had invited pirates to come into the bay to protect the shoreline. And the different pirate ships were seen together in the bay and visiting each other in Acadia. So anyway, the three boys dug this size of your bedroom room and went through the logs, and under it they found another 10 feet of a previously dug earth, and then they found another layer of logs, and then they dug another 3. So we're 3 stories high now in this bedroom size, three bedrooms stacked. and they came to another row of logs, and they finally decided that the job was too big for them. And so that started it all. Now, that's the first thing anybody ever found, and we just don't have any place in the world where you can go and find that kind of a formation that is got there naturally. So it was definitely man-made, and that's what then drew other people to go to the island and go further and further into to digging it up and seeing what they could find.
Well, let me ask you some question about these kids. Now, did they go back and get tools, or they just started digging?
Well, I mean, he went back and got them.
Okay, gotcha.
And they came back to the island the next day with shovels and stuff to dig with. And then they came all summer to do the digging I just told you about.
Okay.
And they did it in great secrecy. They never told anyone. And they swore each other to secrecy, that they weren't going to tell anybody, because they were still sure they had a spot where there was a treasure. And it was a few years before one of them broke down and told his wealthy uncle, and the uncle got other people interested, and they finally formed a company that carried on the digs, and all three boys were on that dig. Okay? So I think it was 7 years before that they got that company going. You want me to go on with history? Because I think, I'm just afraid. When I heard Oak Island myself, my eyes glazed over, and I just couldn't handle any more years or dates or feet, or, you know what I mean? It's all numbers. So it's up to you. I can talk about my family for a while if you'd like, or I'll go on with more history.
You know what? Let's go on with a little bit more history, and don't worry about too much about the dates and stuff like that. Just the general story, just to give people an idea of what we're going over.
Okay, I think. Well, anyway, yes, sure.
You're not going to be tested on it, okay?
Well, I was going to tell you about how I got involved in the book and why I'm pretty limited in my. I'm not a historian, and Oak Island is not my story. My parents are my story. So, but anyway. Let me just see what I can find in my own book to help me get through these moments. Okay, so the first thing that happened after that was that the Onslow Company was formed, and that's the one that the three boys were on. They were the discoverers, and they all worked on it. And it got down to 90 feet. And
well, I think
that's where they found that stone with the inscription. I mean, there's an inscription in it, except that nobody really believes it said what people say it said. No?
Oh, really? Well, tell us about that.
Well, they dug down. They took over where the boys were, and they went down, dug down 10 feet and got logs, 10 feet and got logs, 10 feet and got logs. I mean, and also charcoal and putty and coconut fiber. And when they got to 90 feet, they came across a flat stone, and it is supposed to have said, it has an inscription on it, it was supposed to be translated as 10 feet below, 2 million pounds lie buried. And that would be British pounds, sterling.
Right.
And, but, I mean, most people don't really believe that that the inscription was transcribed to start with. And, well, I don't believe it either. And if you care, I'll talk about that later. But anyway, so that group got down there, and then they dug a shaft right beside the money pit. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry.
Well, I think what happened was they started digging down the next 10 feet. They thought they were going to find this money.
Yeah, they did. They did go further, but water came in.
Right.
Okay, so then they dug a shaft beside the money pit. So now we got two shafts, and their intent was to tunnel over and come up under the treasure. But when they got down to the depths and they went out in the tunnel toward the money pit, the real original money pit, it broke through, and they were flooded out in both shafts.
And didn't they try a bunch of experiments, too, where they would put, like, red dye into one shaft and it would come up the other shaft and all kind of stuff like that?
Well, that was much later. That was a different company. But I'm only going to tell you a few of these because we could spend our life on that, and I'm not your expert on that. You could get better people than me for that story. So anyway, the next people that came were the Truro Company. And they are the ones who drilled through as they were going down in the money pit, they augured through thick spruce as if it were a platform, and then they went through other wood, and then they seemed to be going through loose metal as if coins, and they also were and they also brought up one of the men was seen to be taking something off his auger that looked like a jewel, and he examined it and then put it in his pocket.
Oh, really?
And the person who saw him was one of the company investors, and he confronted the man, James Blado, and James said, "Well, I'll take it to the meeting tonight and show it then." And then he vanished. And a few years later, he was purportedly trying to buy the island or get a group ready to do his own digging.
Really?
But anyway, we never did get to see that jewel. Again, with the Truro Company, water came into the money pit, and this is when the Truro Company, somebody tasted the water, and it was seawater. Up to then, they had thought it was just underground streams in the island that were doing this, but now they knew there must be a connection between the ocean and this shaft, the bottom of the shaft, which is down around 104 feet when the water starts coming in. So they went down to the beach, and they started digging on the beach, and they exposed, first of all, they built a cofferdam to hold back the sea.
Right.
And then they were able to expose the drains that lay under the surface of the beach that were like 5 different drains that came together into a larger tunnel and went inland. And then it was their hypothesis that must be draining seawater in and down through the island, 525 feet across the island and down, and that's what was causing the water to flood every time they dug to that depth. In other words, it was man-made with then this is around 1804, it was man-made with the same kind of technology that people were mining in those days, and so a mining technology had been used on the island to connect the ocean with the bottom of the money pit.
Well, but let me ask you this, though. That had to be like a massive undertaking to do that to 500 feet, you know?
525 feet, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, it was all engineering all the way. I mean, how did they manage to hit that exact spot type thing? They really knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
So, the business of the logs every 10 feet, in retrospect, it's because then when they got whatever they were doing, and we think it was treasure. Okay, we think they were burying a treasure or a treasure of some kind. If it weren't jewels and gold, it could have been something even more valuable. Even documents.
Well, what do you think would be more valuable than gold or jewels and silver?
Well, I mean, they're talking about the Ark of the Covenant and things like that, and
right.
Documents, and important documents. They're talking about the Knights Templar and all that. I mean, there's a lot of historical possibilities that fit. So there are lots of choices.
Even like the original Shakespeare manuscripts and stuff like that, they're saying?
Yeah, people believe that. I'm sorry, I can't quite go. I sincerely hope there are important documents in there, but I'm not one who buys into the Shakespeare theory.
Okay.
But there are. But I hope that there are sacred documents, that kind of thing. Anyway, I mean, when my parents were on the island, people wrote to them all the time. They got a lot of fan mail. And one person says, I just hope when it's all over, it's more than just gold and jewels. So some people wanted it to be, sacred things.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so what happened? Oh, yeah, they can't, when that happened, they had an unusually, so okay, we've got the beach exposed, right?
Yeah.
And we've come to the conclusion in the first year that this Turo company was going, they've come to the conclusion this is where that water's coming from that's flooding us out. So we've got to stop that. But at that time, their cofferdam, which was allowing them to do this elaborate examination or exploration of the beach, the cofferdam gave way because there was an unusually high tide, a once-in-a-year high tide, and a very vicious storm that just crumbled all the top edge of it, and then it all just immediately vanished. And so the next year, of course, people were only working on Oak Island in the summer, or the good weather. It's Canada. The land's all frozen and everything in the winter, and you can't do much. And so when they came back the next year, they decided they would not put a cofferdam in and go to all that expense again, that they would dig another shaft beside the money pit. So here we go for another one that's in the same alignment as the money pit and close by it. And this time, when they got close down and they were going to tunnel over, it crashed in. The money pit caved in. And a man who'd been working in the tunnel, just about getting to the money pit, had to run for his life. And as he did, the earth and debris came right after him, and he grabbed up a piece of wood that was a painted yellow keg end. A keg, like a keg for things to store in.
Oh, beer.
Store. Yeah,
been beer,
right. It's that kind of, I don't think so.
Well, you never know. I'm going to write my own book.
Well, they were hoping for more.
Okay. Well, you know what? He's working hard in that pit all that time. He needed a beer, right?
Right. Exactly. Anyway, so those shafts went down. And at another time, farmers came and started farming on the island. Okay. And Sophie Sellers was plowing near the money pit end of on the money pit end of the island, but it was not at the money pit. And the earth opened up and gobbled up her oxen. So it was with great effort that she got the ox out again and got the help to get the ox out again. And it was a few years before William Blair then examined that hole, dug it out, and it was the same as the money pit shaft in that all the earth in it was pre-dug. And when they took out that dug earth, the sides of the hard clay showed pickaxes and shovels. So this was not just a natural occurrence. This also was part of whatever work occurred on the island.
Wait, and that ground gave way just because the ox were walking on the ground?
Well, I think it gave way because loose earth is never the same as hard baked clay that's never been touched.
Right.
So you can backfill it all you want, but you can't, and you can tamp it all you want, but it's still going to sink, So it gave way the day she was there. I mean, it probably didn't have a lot of oxen walking on it at other times. So anyway, that happened as well, and the I don't remember the order of the different companies that went in there, but there was one company that went in and put down shafts, and they didn't trust, even though they had workmen on their crew that had worked on the previous dig, they didn't trust them, so they didn't do what those men said. When they started digging, they were determined, they knew where they were going, where they were, and the men said, no, it shouldn't be, you should be 10 feet over there, blah, blah. And so this company worked for a long time and dug a couple of shafts down and tunnels all over the place, but they didn't get anything. And when William Blair went to the island, who was one of the people who, some time he bought part of the island, and he was in one investment company and another. But anyway, when he was drilling, he drilled in the money pit, the original money pit area. He dug through cement, and he had it sent to England to be analyzed because he wanted to know if it was shale or. And that's what a lot of people who think Oak Island is a hoax, they think, well, everything was natural anyway. But he wanted a definitive answer, and he did not tell them what they were examining. He just picked the best company there was in England and got their analysis back, and it was definitely, without any question at all, it was man-made cement. And also he is the one who came up with, because he drilled through cement and then they drilled through cement again, so they assumed that this was a cement vault that was down there. So anyway, he is also the one who came up with a tiny little itty-bitty ball the size of a seed that turned out to be the piece of parchment that was has the letters VI on it.
Oh, really? Well, let me ask you this then. Now,
I beg your pardon?
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Because I remember that part. Now, if that was a vault, right, with the parchments in it, and they've drilled through it with all that water and stuff,
yeah,
wouldn't everything in there be gone?
Well, I know. Through this thing, I've met, or at least a correspondent with a man from Sweden who tells me that there was a form for, a method of preserving papers in some kind of an iodine mix, I think.
Right.
And
mercury. It was mercury, right?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I forget. I honestly forget. I don't have all this stuff committed to memory, and when I learn something, I'm fascinated, and then a little bit, in a month or so, I forget exactly what I heard and who I heard it from and everything else. But anyway, this guy assures me, and he's referred to it a couple of times in his correspondence, that it was a well-known method of waterproofing documents so that there wouldn't be a problem. But anyway, in R.V. Harris's book, people are always talking about it being a hoax, so I always kind of have that in my mind. But R.V. Harris describes 35 people getting together when that piece of parchment was opened up. I mean, it was the size of a seed, and it took quite a bit of time for the local doctor to work it until it could be opened up and flattened. And the parchment had never been out of the hands of the man who brought it up, except when he handed it to the doctor in front of everybody. And so there was no question of this being planted,
Okay.
Anyway, so, and another thing that happened with Hedden, or at least, with Blair's search, was that he didn't know about it. But later, William Chappell, who got to dig for treasure on the island himself, he had come up with gold tracings on his drill bit, but he wiped them off and didn't tell anybody. So that's the kind of subterfuge that was always surrounding Oak Island.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of legend and myth, and a lot of skullduggery, and a lot of accusations to people staging stuff and planting things and things like that.
Right.
But it kind of adds to the addiction of the story. You know?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, it's too believable, right?
There's so many winding turns. It's almost like all these tunnels and these side tunnels that they tried to build. The story, and with the drainage tunnels and stuff as well. The story is like that as well, with all these different theories and plans and all kind of stuff. But we're going to have to take a little commercial break right now. We're here tonight with a fascinating story about Oak Island. And we're with Lee Lamb, and she's written 2 books called Oak Island Obsession, which I think I have now, The Restall Story, and Oak Island Family, The Restall Hunt for Buried Treasure. She's written both of these books. You can find links to these books on the Opperman Report blog. When we get back, we're going to be hearing all about her, because her family is the Restall family. That's her parents, right?
Right, exactly.
Right. So we're going to get into all of that. There's been tragic deaths on this island. There's all kinds of legends that 7 people have to die before the treasure can be found. Just all kinds of just remarkable stuff. So we're going to be getting all into this tonight. We have plenty of time to tell the story nice and all kinds of every kind of fascinating detail. So we'll be right back after this break with more about Oak Island and our guest Lee Lamb.
You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York.
If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. These 100% therapeutic-grade oils help support the body's natural functions. You can click on her website, posted on Essentially Tammy, that's T-A-M-I, to see the current deals and check out the benefits of oils such as frankincense, joy, valor, lemon, thieves, panaway, and many more. Email Jocotami, that's Jocatami, @yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. That's 352-239-8546. Hey, don't forget good old Amanda at Pacific West Bamboo. Pacific West Bamboo, 503-839-8126. You can reach her at demroots@oppermail.com. Pacific West Bamboo, your #1 source for timber, construction, and craft-grade bamboo poles, plants, products, and more. They specialize in eco-friendly reclaimed wood products for the home and garden. They're located in Portland, Oregon, servicing the Northwest for over 10 years. They can be reached at 503-839-8126. That's 503-839-8126. Her Facebook page is Pacific West Bamboo. They can and do ship nationwide, and they're currently getting a new line of bamboo flooring, veneers, and laminates made from Guadawa bamboo, one of the world's strongest bamboos, grown and produced and manufactured in Central America using only economically and environmentally friendly practices and standards. Good old Mike Gray at infinityhomeplans.com. Check out Infinity Home Plans and Design Services, your resource for 3D and 2D draftsman services. They offer a multitude of products, including stock home plans, 2D digital drawings, 3D models, renderings, and more. That's infinityhomeplans.com. Hey, don't forget emailrevealer.com. That's my website, emailrevealer.com. And we offer all different kinds of services. Current place of employment locate. Let's say you're trying to locate where your ex-husband or your ex-wife is working so you can collect on child support. You contact us, we can locate their place of employment for you and help you collect on that child support. Let's say you think that your husband or your wife is cheating on you. Give us their email address and we can trace it back to online dating websites and dating services. So we have a multitude of services on emailrevealer.com. Hey, don't forget the New World Mexican Women. Okay, now you just Google New World Mexican Women. You can find their book where they first describe their love letters to their men and their sons and their uncles and their brothers who have traveled from South America to North America to work as migrant workers. But the women down in this town there in Guerrero, Mexico, they want their men to come back. So they've written these beautiful love letters, and they've put them all in this beautiful coffee table book. First, the letters are written in Spanish, handwritten. You can see pictures of the people writing the books. And then it comes on after that, and it's typewritten in English. And then also, too, the second half of the book is teaching you how to make authentic Mexican jewelry from these New World Mexican women. You can find their book on Lulu.com. It's only $19, or you can download the digital edition for free. That's New World Mexican Women, and it's a two-part book where first part is the love letters, and the second part is the making the handmade jewelry, the authentic Mexican jewelry. But you can also contact them, too, as well, if you want to get a deal on wholesale jewelry from Mexico, from these women. Hey, welcome back to the Opperman Report, brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com, /Opperman Report, get yourself a free audiobook. We're here tonight with Lee Lamb, who's written the book Oak Island Obsession, The Restall Story, and another book called Oak Island Family, The Restall Hunt for Buried Treasure. And I got links to both of those books, as well as a picture of Lee Lamb and her biography. You could find it on the Opperman Report blog if you want to check that out right now. Oh, boy. So, Lee, there's so much legend, and what do you call it? Like superstition almost, right? Like, like a lot of people think that the island is haunted.
Yep.
What do you think?
Well, I think that when I was on the island, I did go on the island for 9 weeks 1 year and 6 months another year with my own family.
Okay.
And my husband helped work with my dad and Bobby. I felt so healthy and well and calm and happy on that island that it was like a revelation. It was just beautiful. And when there was a storm and you walked along, or when I walked alone along the shoreline from big rock to big rock, I felt so exhilarated, and I just never felt more powerful and positive in my life than when I was doing that. And on the other hand, when I looked at the records of what had happened with my parents in their work, I mean, Dad and Bobby with the work, and looked at the overall thing, and of course the accident, I felt it's a malevolent place. So yeah, I think there's something supernatural about it, but as there are in many places, and in many circumstances in our lives, if we want to bother to look or notice.
Okay, now what about this? Because just recently they had that TV show that's on History Channel or Discovery Channel, one of those channels, TLC, The Curse of Oak Island, right? And I saw on there that you visited the island just recently. Yeah, I went there for their first year of filming. I was invited down for 3 days or 5 days, I guess, in total, but yeah, last year it was great, their first year. Did you feel anything when you went just recently? No, I felt like the way when I go there and it's nice and bright and sunny and things are nice and it's a beautiful place and there's a softness in the air down there that just doesn't happen anywhere in my province. I felt really good. I didn't feel anything malevolent at that time. Gotcha. Okay. All right. What'd you think about the filming production? Have you ever been involved in anything like that before? No, it was a big thrill. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, I've done a little reality TV too. No, so what do you think of this new TV production that they're doing down there? Do you think, like a lot of it, they already know what they're gonna put out there before they go looking for something? I'm not following you 100% on that. Now, you're talking about the same show, season 2, right? Yeah. Okay, and it's on History Channel. Are you suggesting that everything is
fake. To be a usual blunt self.
Well, not really faked, but sort of like a planned out ahead and kind of staged. And like when they're going in, they're finding that little coin down there that they're not finding it live on TV by luck, but maybe they found it like a couple of months earlier, and now they're just kind of recreating the finding of the coin and things like that. Yeah, well, as I say, this is the first time I ever had anything to do with reality TV. Yeah. And I don't, as a rule, there aren't a lot of them that I watch. There are a couple that I do enjoy very much, but I'm not going to, I sure as the devil don't want to pass judgment on them. And I'm not part of this year's production, so I have no idea what they're going to do or what they found or anything. Let me tell you about my experience. Okay. Like, they treated me so well. They just kind of gathered me up, and I felt as if I was in a bubble of love and happiness. It was just wonderful, and they worked me to death. They were filming morning and afternoon, and I was just, I can remember at one point when they were interviewing me and filming it, and they had to take a break, and they turned off the camera, and two of the fellows walked away, and the third one was one of the cameramen, but, the camera was off, and he asked me a question that would have come next kind of thing, yeah. And I just told him I just carried on. As if I were being filmed, and I told him things about my personal life, and I thought, my goodness, things that had happened as a result of Oak Island and everything, and I thought, and then of course I realized, this poor soul, here I am, and he said to me back something also very personal and very nice about his mom, and it was just beautiful. And when I left that place, when I was out of their care, I thought, I'm going to go through withdrawal. They've treated me so well. I'm going to go through withdrawal. Now, by the time I was through, I was pretty sure it was going to be the Restall story, not anybody else's story, because they got so much material from me. They filmed them so much. I was happy to supply it. And my reason for being in it was actually very selfish. I knew with the accident on the island and the tragedy that my family was going to be in it whether I liked it or not. Right. And so I wanted to be in it so that I could give them good material, not have them make up some garbagey stuff the way a lot of the publications do, like the media do and have done. And so that was why I was in it. And a couple of times they did want me to do something that I said, that's not me. And I'm not having you come and film me do some phony thing that I would never do in real life. And very good. They didn't let it go. No. Somebody else took a run at me the next time, and then the third time they took a run at me. I think I spoke a little louder than they're accustomed to me. I shouted, and that was the end of that. And I think we were all happy because I managed to give them what they wanted without doing what they wanted. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to stage something phony and weepy about my parents, So, I think, but I want to say one thing about them, and that is that there's a production company, Prometheus, and then it's for History Channel, and then, of course, History Channel would get the final say of what's in and what's out. And, a lot of filming was done for me that was not used, and everybody I've spoken to, it's the same thing. And so I guess that's how a reality show works. But the head man on this, Joe Lessard, bothered to think about what the work my parents were doing
and he asked such intelligent questions and gathered information that he then, even though there wasn't much, he got the real nuggets of what was important, and he got it accurately. And even this year, when they made a reference to my parents, again, they used a technical expression that was 100% accurate and dead on. So I'm very, very, very impressed with them. But as for the whole show and what it's all about and the audience they're trying to, well, I got no comment on that because, I mean, it's not my kind of show, but, and everybody be happy that my kind of show isn't on TV all the time,
Well, I'll tell you something. You came off very well, and I thought that they treated you like royalty,
I did too.
Yeah, and I really like that. I really like that. So tell us about your family. Now, your parents are fascinating people right out of the ballpark.
Yeah, right.
So
exactly.
let's hear about the whole thing about the Restall family and their experience on Oak Island and the tragedy. There was a tragic accident and all that kind of stuff. So just...
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all of it is so exciting. How can I leave anything out? How many years have you got to spend in my family's life?
You know what? If you want to keep going, we can go for 4 hours. We can go for okay. All right. I don't want to put any pressure on you, but or you can even come back too if you have if you want to share.
Well, anyway, one thing at a time. So let's deal with this. Mom was a ballet. She was a dancer. She wasn't a ballet dancer. She was a dancer in England. Mom's dad was killed in the First World War, and so her mother had to take her back. My mother's mother and my mother went to live with my mother's family, and they were very strict, and everybody had to work, and nobody talked at the dinner table but Dad, and he didn't like having 2 extra mouths to feed, and my mother's mother had to work for the family fish and chip shop, and my mother was not appreciated as a child. And then her mother, the same woman I'm talking about, her last name was Shelley, became an actress and went around England, and she went to India and other places. She went wherever the jobs were. And so she left my mom boarded. And Mom had a couple of lovely years with a lady that looked after her. And then my mother was sent to a place where they teach you to dance, and they school you, and then they charge money for you, and they keep all the money.
Oh, really?
So my mom had a free babysitter, you might say, because my mother was put to work when she was 12 years old. But she loved the life anyway. So Dad was a motorcycle rider in a drome. That's like a barrel, and they drive around inside the barrel type thing.
It's like that big giant steel ball.
No, that wasn't then.
That was later. Okay.
That's later. But at the time, it was a drome. Dromes were everywhere. Like all the fairs and all the park grounds and that had dromes, and there was a whole hundreds of motorcycle riders who did the tour and went from here to there, Germany and Italy and Britain and Ireland, England and Ireland, I mean. Anyway, so Mom and Dad needed a woman for the front of his show, and he was going to Germany, and Mom was just to look good, stand up there, or maybe learn to ride the motorcycle on the rollers at the front of the show.
Okay.
The way they do, and they take their hands off the handlebars and all that, or they stand on the seat while the motorcycle's running on the rollers. And anyway, they went to Germany, and I have pictures of the fairgrounds, and I mean it's thousands of people just jammed together in the midway, walking down the midway, and all these different shows with motorcycle riders and everything, really big in Germany because they're like very mechanical and interested in that kind of thing. And anyway, that's where they bought their globe, and
well,
that's where
Did you grow up there at the fairs as well?
Well, I was born and left behind with a nurse.
Gotcha.
And then when they finished with Germany, they came back to England and did their globe and their drome stuff. And yeah, I was living in a trailer with my first memories are about age 2.5, and Daddy had just come home from a trip, and I think it was Germany, and we were living in a little trailer.
Like on the fairgrounds?
I don't know. I mean, I was only 2.5. I really only saw about 10 feet around me, to tell you the truth. I can remember when my dad bought my little skipping doll. It was celluloid from Germany.
Okay.
And it fell off. It skipped its way right off the table, and the dog ate it. Oh. And then we came to Canada, and I worried for years if I'd killed the dog, But anyway, then we came to Canada, and Dad worked he was a plumber and steam fitter, so that's what he did. And then in the summer, they went with the carnivals. And I did travel around with them and lived in the trailer 1 year and in a tent another year. But they decided it wasn't life for a girl, and then they talked my aunt and uncle into taking care of me in the summers when they went, because Bobby was born and an infant couldn't go around. They couldn't take care of an infant.
Okay.
Because I was 6.5 when Bobby was born. But I have very fond memories of living on the carnival and the noise, the sounds, and the sweet air in those days. I mean, it was wonderful. But anyway, I'm talking about them. I'm supposed to be talking about them.
No, but that's interesting, too, because that's the kind of, I often want to just, give up everything, go run off and join the circus,
Yeah, right. Right.
I'm serious. I would just love to,
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated by that kind of life, so.
Well, it was fascinating.
Yeah.
And in our case, Dad, by the time I was in grade 2, we moved to Hamilton, and they bought a house, and so I went to school, and so did Bobby. All of my life, like all my growing up to about 17, was in the same house all winter long, and then in the summer they would go with the carnival or whatever, and Bobby and I would go to Aunt Annette and Uncle Bill, who were the opposite kind of people to my parents. My parents were laughing all the time and excited about this and that and interested in everything. And Aunt Annette and Uncle Bill were very lovely people, but very religious and very calm and orderly. And it was just the opposite kind of to the chaos, with my own family.
Yeah.
It was like at my place, the rule children are to be seen and not heard didn't occur. You could be seen and heard, but you had to have something to say that was worth listening to. So and so we had really vibrant conversations every night at supper time. It was fun. And then every evening, Dad would be working on one of his projects, and Mom would she would either be playing the piano or she'd be sewing or something like that, and I would be working on I grew up in a family that worked all the time, but it was fun work.
Yeah. And
Dad would either invent things like he applied for patents on certain things, like a folding boat, for instance, or he built carnival rides of his own design and out of truck parts and things like that, and he even disassembled one ride because before he got it finished, he thought of a better one and he needed the parts. So he was just forever doing something. And he did run his own plumbing business for a couple of years, although it took all his time, all day long to work and then all night long trying to collect your money type thing, which isn't fun at all. So,
well, let me ask you this now. Okay, now you grew up in this really creative atmosphere.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you also grew up in this other kind of constricted, kind of quiet,
boring
atmosphere. But now, how did you have children of your own, and how did you raise them?
Well, I remember having a really hard time with my daughter once, and she said, "Well, Mom, you raised us to think for ourselves, so what did you expect?" You know.
Mm.
But yeah, I did my best to give him. We had a very different situation, you know. I mean, well,
let me ask you this, because my daughter's 14 and she has her own radio show as well. And
really?
Oh yeah, and I'm involved in all kind of crazy stuff, all kind of congressional investigations and all kind of weird. I was involved in a Tiger Woods case and a Charlie Sheen case, and all this kind of crazy stuff. It's a crazy atmosphere here as well.
Right.
But my daughter's 14 and she's a great kid. What year did your daughter give you trouble?
What year did my daughter what?
Start giving you trouble.
All my kids did the same. Hit age 14. I remember my older son was so much trouble that we were just exhausted dealing with him. And Brooke, the baby of the family, Brooke, got a little mouthy, and I said, "Look, I know you're 14. I know it's your turn, but I can't take any more. You'll just have to wait, okay?" And he said, "Oh, okay." But yeah, 14's a horrible year. It's a horrible year.
Okay, well, so far so good. My kid's so good. I have no. But then maybe she's just worried. she doesn't want to get me mad, you know?
Yeah. Okay. No, I just think, like, one evening when I was down in the living room with my husband, and this is my second husband, and I heard a noise, and I went upstairs, and there was my daughter out on the roof of the overhang for our carport.
Yeah. With
a boyfriend. I was totally unprepared for anything like that. Like, what are you doing? And he and the fellow started, "Hi, Mrs. Lamb," and Sandy said, she was quite indignant. She didn't know why she couldn't have a friend over and all this.
On the roof, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, my daughter, I got to tell you, between you and me, my daughter just had her first date on Monday of this week. Yeah, but it was just a very innocent little movie date with this little boy. They didn't even hold hands or anything. So, oh, boy. But I'm still exhausted from
Well, I'm telling you, when she does hold hands, she's not going to tell you. It'll be broadcast to the world.
I'll find out. I'm a private investigator. I can find out. I got everybody under surveillance. Okay, but tell us now. This is just fascinating about the way you grew up with your parents. Now, your parents are larger than life. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and you know something? I mean, not only I wasn't the only one. Mom, Bobby, Rick, and I all worshipped my dad. Yeah. He as larger than life. They all were. He was even bigger than that. You know what I mean? He was just. And he was so able to do everything. He could fix anything. He could create anything out of anything. And that leads me to why some people have asked, why would Mel Chappell have given the contract to dig for treasure on his island to Bob Restall, who's a motorcycle rider in the Globe of Death. But my dad he knew how to do everything, and he knew how to make things out of nothing. And he had been so persistent. He had written to Chappell and written, and it looked like Chappell was going to let him on the island. Then he'd take somebody else, and my dad would just write again, and carried on for 4 years before Chappell finally said he could go on the island.
Okay, wait a minute. So your dad heard about this island?
Yeah. He heard about it back when they were in England. I mean, like when I was a gleam in my father's eye.
Right. And he said, "I got to get involved."
Yes. Well, I mean, I don't know what brought it to that was a part about the family. Like, we were close and we had so much fun, but, you're supposed to grow up and get married and have a family of your own. So I did. And darn me if the first year after I was married, they didn't go with the circus. After all the years we'd talked about going with the circus, they went to the circus.
Wow.
And then the next year, they come back and they say they're going to Oak Island to dig for treasure. I mean, it was insane. Anyway,
You wanted to go?
Well, of course I wanted to go, but I also wanted my husband and baby and my new life, you know.
Right. I know. Okay, you know what? This is a good spot to take a break. We're going to take a nice little commercial break here.
Okay.
You can get a nice little drink. We're getting to the good stuff. I got Lee laughing and having fun. So we're getting to the good stuff. Okay, we'll be right back after this commercial break. We're with Lee Lamb. Just a fascinating story. Just imagine growing up at the carnival and your parents run off to join the circus. All this fascinating stuff. She's written these books, Oak Island Obsession, The Restall Story, and the other book is Oak Island Family, The Restall Hunt for Buried Treasure. This is the story about how her mom and dad went to Oak Island. These circus performers went there and went on the adventure of a lifetime. And we're going to be hearing more about this when we get back, right after this message.
You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York.
Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. And don't forget, this show is brought to you by Audible.com. Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. You sign up for free, and you can get a free audiobook. Even these books here that the good old Lee Lamb is telling us about tonight, they could be on there. You get a free audiobook. Go there, check it out, sign up, and look for her book. You can get it for free. Listen to it for free. And she still gets her commission on it. Don't worry, Lee. Lee is the author of Oak Island Obsession, The Restall Story, and Oak Island Family, The Restall Hunt for Buried Treasure. We're hearing about her dad, this big famous guy, and bigger than life, you know. And just a couple of things I just want to point out. By the way, too, got a little announcement coming up on our family of stations here on Hazy and on CJ Mars and Awake and a couple of the other stations that we're on. We're also bringing on Thomas Sheridan, who has a huge following in Ireland and the UK and stuff like that. And he's going to be coming to all our stations here. So this is going to be a big we should be seeing a big jump in listeners and growth and all the stations like that. So we really want to welcome Thomas Sheridan and guys like Josh Brookshire and Mike Bluehair from Film the Police. They're also going to be getting shows on these stations. And we're hearing, too, they don't even know this yet. I'm going to announce this. They don't even know it. But Josh and Mike, they want you over at Hazy and some of these other stations as well, too. So we're going to be bringing you all out there and bringing a lot of traffic to all our different hosts that we're bringing on these stations. And don't forget, we appreciate your donations and your sponsorships. If you have a business or a website and you want to promote, contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com. We'll bring you on here. We'll play commercials on here. We'll get you a lot of publicity and promotion. As you see, as we add new stations every week, the rates are staying the same. You can lock in these low rates now and get your stuff all over the world now. Forget it. We have a reach out there that I never thought we would have a year ago. But we're here tonight with Lee Lamb, a fascinating woman who's telling us a story about her mom and dad, or she calls it her mum, went out there to Oak Island to dig for buried treasure. So do you remember where we left off?
Well, I was trying to explain why Chappell would have chosen my dad.
Okay.
Because people kind of think that's crazy, like motorcycle rider. But, I mean, Chappell chose my dad because my dad was so persistent and he came across as someone who had been following Oak Island for years and years, which is very true, and had his own ideas on how to go about the treasure. And Chappell had had a series of people who made promises, but were only wanting to work the 4 months of the summer. So every time you took a chance on somebody, a whole year was gone by. Chappell was over 70. And he wanted to see that treasure up in his lifetime. And he was very disappointed when he gave a contract and then the people didn't do what they said they would do. They just did something like drill a few holes and then another year was gone. So he took a chance on Dad, especially after he seemed to be giving it to Dad and then snatched it away and gave it to somebody else, and then he did that again. And then eventually it was, well, if you go to the island right now, you can have it. And so Dad and Mom and Bobby went to the island in October, like to face winter on Oak Island, just so that they'd be there, and before Chapel changed his mind.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, when you go to Oak Island, especially that year back then, that far back, was there stores? Were there businesses there? Was there anything there? Farms? Anything? Or was it just you were just there in a tent?
Well, they were there. They had put up a tool shed. And when they first went there, the first day they went there, and then when they went back at night in the boat, because that's how you got there.
Okay.
There was a bad storm, and they didn't get back for 2 days. And when they got back, all their stuff had been stolen.
Oh boy!
So Dad put a window in the tool shed, and that became their first home, the shack. And then he built extensions on it, and there were stores in the mainland down the old highway ran along the lakeshore, and there were Western Shore is a town that's right opposite Oak Island, and then just a few miles up, 2 or 3 miles up, is Chester, which is a well-known Nova Scotian town, and the other direction is Bridgewater and Mahone Bay. And there were stores in all of those places at that time.
Okay, so your mom and Dad are living in a tool shed. They say, hey, let's get a cup of coffee and a newspaper. They hop in the rowboat and they row over there to get it, or did they by then have a motorboat, maybe?
Well, no, they had a motorboat because my husband lent them ours, and we never saw it again.
I love it, yeah.
No. It was funny when they came back. The first time they came back, I said I had to sort of be go-between, and I said to Dad, and my husband was standing there. Doug was standing there, kind of silently and interested, and I said, Dad, we really we didn't mean to give you the boat. We were just lending it, and we'd like to have our boat back. And there was silence, and he said, well, I'd love to give it back, but we need it. So anyway, that was that.
Same thing I would say. We need that boat.
Yeah, right.
I'm living in a tool shed.
Yeah, right, exactly. How could we possibly need it as much as they need it?
I need my coffee in the morning. I got to go get the coffee.
Well, to be real, there was no electricity. There was no telephone.
Right.
There was no such thing as a computer or any of that. There was no cell phones, nothing like that. So they had to go over to the mainland and use the telephone box outside of the garage, the local service station. And if they wanted to call, they'd have to go there and stand there and wait till the person called them.
Oh, no.
And there's always the chance of storms coming up so that you can't go when you commit or whatever.
Well, what year was that? What year did your dad move down there?
I beg your pardon?
What year was that?
1959 in October.
Okay, then when was John Wayne and all those guys involved in this? And then who was the president too? Teddy Roosevelt was involved, right?
Roosevelt was involved in it years before.
Right.
I don't know the exact year, but anyway, it was after those things I told you about.
Okay.
And Captain Bowden, an American, declared that he was going to hunt for treasure on Oak Island, and he was going to send down an undersea diver and things like that. And he got a lot of publicity about it, and that's when
John Wayne.
No, I don't know about John Wayne, but I do know about President Roosevelt was the one. Was he Theodore? I can't remember.
I don't know. No,
it's not Teddy.
The other one?
It was Franklin Delano. That's who it was.
There you go.
Hey, it's American history, not Canadian.
Well, okay, listen, I don't know my history either. I'm not going to be attested on this. But now, what about? Was John Wayne really involved or no? Is that made up?
Yeah,
John?
no. I read that too, but I don't know where I read it, and I only read it once. So,
Okay.
As for Roosevelt, I think that I also heard like he was in it, and he had some pictures taken it, and he was quite enthusiastic about it. He was one of the original investors. And then Bowden went down, and he just destroyed the money pit. He destroyed everything that was there, like all that was left, like ladders and things, and then used to climb to get from level to level, and it was meaningless. Like there was no point of it, no need of it. And of course, his idea about using a deep sea diver, like what, to go in the money pit, which is flooded, no point.
Right.
Anyway, he wanted another contract with the person who owned it at the time. I might have been Blair, I can't remember who. And the person said, no way. I don't think I haven't seen evidence that you'll be able to raise enough money. And anyway, Bowden threatened him, said that if he didn't get a renewal, he'd speak to the press, speak to a publication, and he did go and talk to a magazine in the South, and said there never had been a treasure on Oak Island, blah blah blah.
Oh, really?
And then the other one wrote back and said, you totally blatantly destroyed. There was no need to do damage. You had your opportunity to dig for treasure. You could have it again. All I asked for was a surety that you had the money or the investors. And anyway, that was it was nasty and it ended. So that's a little bit of involvement that Franklin Delano Roosevelt had with it.
Okay.
But there were other lots of little stories, and I don't know them all. There are several people down on the East Coast that know all the story by heart, and they go around to different groups and talk about it, and they might come on your show sometime.
Well, we probably will do more shows about this because I really want to get the surround. I like to take a story and surround it, and get every angle from it. And get it on record. So, but your thing is fascinating, and I love the whole idea of your father because I think it's we might be distant relatives. Your dad, I wouldn't be surprised. Right. So your dad gets down there now, and he stole your rowboat. Let's face it. Okay.
Now I want to tell you.
Yeah.
That why I told you about all the other stuff, like the three boys digging the hole, and then it's down the same hole, and it goes to 100 and whatever feet, and then there's another shaft beside it, and another shaft beside that, and two more down by the beach, and this big tunnel that goes from the beach right through. Because by the time my dad got to the island was like Swiss cheese,
right,
with all these holes and shafts to great depths. And that's what he had to contend with. And there were times, certain things they did, they ended up they were pumping water out of the money pit and working down the money pit. And when they did that, air bubbles came up in several other, like they came up in the cave-in pit where the oxen fell in, and it came up in Chapel Junior's pond. So things were connected, but they weren't connected by the pirates. So when you hear people talking on the various shows about the connections and all that, I mean, there's some of it's seepage from one to another because they're close. But they were never intended to be joined type thing. It isn't a logical thing you've got left anymore. And then at the end... Well,
let me ask you, you think it's... Now, today, if I were to go there and quit my job and start working on this treasure...
Yeah.
It's hopeless?
Well, if you have people willing to put millions in...
Really?
And stop the water... we've still got the same problem we had originally, except that now you can no longer. My dad spent all his time trying to find a place to cut off the water. He didn't really want to go down the money pit and pump it out faster than it came in and work down there, but he did do it, But anyway, after him, like now we're really hopping around, but after...
Let's go back, okay?
We'll go back, not forward.
Yeah, and we'll go back to the part where your dad's down there, he stole your rowboat. He stole your boat.
Yes, right.
What was it like there, that kind of, when your dad started working on this? Tell us about that.
Well, the first winter, they were really just there because they wanted to keep the contract with Chapel. And my mom came home. Dad brought Mom home at Christmas, and they spent Christmas with us because Ricky had been left with me. And so Mom decided to stay and with me, but we had 2 apartments over my husband's workshop, so they had their own space. Mom and Rick stayed behind, and Dad went back, and Dad and Bobby put the winter in and tried to work on things and prepare, make things that they would be using when the weather changed enough. But at that time, they couldn't really do any work at all. But anyway, after that, it became... what they really did was they totally exposed the beach down at Smith's Cove, looking for that spot to cut off the water.
Yeah.
Okay, but they never quite found it.
Well, wait, how could that be? Now, why couldn't they just dig a giant trench along that beach?
Well, they did that, and they did the whole... Because, we got to go down at least... the holes they were digging were down to 30 feet.
Yeah.
Because that... You know how it comes in under the beach and then goes down to 104 feet or whatever?
Yeah.
At the money pit? Well, that's descending at a sharp incline. So that when you're digging looking for it, you got to dig pretty damn deep. It's not near the surface.
Yeah, but even still, has anybody ever brought like a big backhoe on that island?
Oh, yeah, they destroyed the island. Now that's
really?
why you can't. Now none of the original. As if it wasn't bad enough that the original shaft was destroyed, but the other shafts that went down and the tunnels that came out were also all destroyed because of a person who did bring a backhoe over after the accident.
Okay, well, let's go back to the part where there was hope. Let's pretend.
Lots of hope. When I went to Oak Island for the first time, with my husband and kids, and we were going there so my Doug could work with them, help them out, and we were there 9 weeks the first time. We just arrived we arrive on the island and we walk up. When you go to the island, you go up 32 feet, and then there's a plateau. So the money pit and everything is up on that plateau that's 32 feet above sea level. So anyway, so you climb up the hill, and there's on the plateau and the money pit and my parents' shack, which they called it, and the tent trailer they'd put up for us, worth about 7 lawnmowers. And I said to my dad, "What's with all the lawn cutting?" I couldn't believe it. Well, he bought them all because they had an engine in them that was the perfect size for things he was doing, like charging batteries and stuff like that. And it was cheaper to buy the lawnmower and get the motor than it was to buy the motor separately.
That makes sense, yeah.
But anyway, his time, and Bobby's time, was digging on the beach, repairing things, making do with things, like creating things. They had to build this big structure. You've seen it in a lot of pictures. It's on the cover of my book. And that was simply to hold the weight of the pump off the money pit, because by now they're using a shaft that's been in the ground. It's hidden shaft they're using, the one he dug to look for treasure. But they're using that to put the pump in, to go down to the depths to pump it out as fast as it comes in, type thing. Right. And if they'd put the weight of the pump on the shaft itself, it would have just crumbled. So, like, terrible amount of maintenance work and that kind of stuff. And one of the things, when they were exploring the beach, they discovered a vertical, what Dad called a vertical shaft. So here I am, arriving on the first day, and I get a few minutes with my dad, and he's just totally distraught. He found the hole where the pirates were going to come back and shut off the water, and he lost the hole. And I thought, like, how do you lose a hole? Like, I mean, I couldn't wrap my mind around, I can't understand it. Well, what he meant was that he had put cement down it, and the cement didn't mix properly.
Oh, no.
And so he not only didn't get it stopped or blocked, but the cement went out to sea and wrecked the hole, so it couldn't be used again for that. So anyway, but that was like one discovery he made, was this 16 inches across and about 30, I forget how deep it was. It was fairly deep.
But wait a second. Your dad found the pipe that was bringing the water in.
Well, he didn't think it was. He thought it was. He thought it was the spot where the pirates had.
Yeah.
It wasn't where it was supposed to be. Okay, it was off to one edge of the beach, and that's not where the other people said they saw the drains coming in and coming together in one tunnel.
Yeah.
That was at a different location. Oh, but, like, 20 feet away or 30 feet away. But so he didn't think it was that spot, but what he thought was, this is the spot where the pirates were coming. So he was quite sure of that. But in fact, we don't know what that vertical shaft was. We do know that it was 18 inches wide and it was quite deep, about 30 feet deep, I think.
And he messed it up hopelessly.
And the stones fell into it, and stuff like that. Anyway, he did also. In that first year, they had tremendous media coverage. Like, they had television shows down there and everything. And Dad was hoping it would bring in some investors, because my dad had gone to the island thinking that he believed in the self-made man, and he believed that a smart fella who's careful and works very hard, but he thinks about what he's doing, that guy's going to be okay. He's going to do it. He's going to get the job done. And you don't need to be rich, and you don't need to go to university, and you don't need all this razzmatazz stuff. I mean, it was almost as if he needed to prove that the ordinary guy could do it. And that's what he really did, was he followed what he had read about other people, what they had done on the island, and took it another step further. For instance, remember I told you that somebody had brought up this, what they thought was a jewel?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's records about what people were part of a company, what days they worked, how long they worked, and where they were situated exactly. So he knew where they had been when they had to drill to do that. But when they drilled, they were having a lot of trouble getting the drill casing through.
Yeah.
So they gave up on the casing and just put the drill rod down. But then when they tried to replace it, just go back down and find the rest of that treasure, those coins they seem to have gone through, and the jewel that they brought up, and the gold bits of gold chain, 3 links of gold chain, they realized that the drill must have been deflected because they couldn't get it back to the same place, and it hadn't had a casing. So Dad spent months underground working with the pump running at 500 gallons a minute, taking the water out while he and Bobby are working, and crews from the town, and Doug at one point in one year that we were there, and in winter time. But at least you could do underground work in the wintertime. And Dad and Bobby drilled everywhere that length of drill could have gone from that spot. And they noted the different earth. It was like an auger or something you're using. Anyway, it brings the stuff up.
Yeah.
And so there's different kinds of soil, and there's this and there's that. But he went through every possibility and did not come to the treasure himself.
Okay, then what do you think? You think that was fake?
No, I think that one of those holes where the money pit caved in moved the treasure. The treasure fell, and it got moved this way or that way. But that is when Dad discovered that there was a spiral tunnel that goes around the outside of the money pit.
Oh, really? I never heard about that at all.
Yeah, I know. Like it's what my dad had access. Mel Chapel was the chapel who owned the island when my dad went there.
Okay.
And Mel Chapel gave Dad the records from his own work. And just remind me later to tell you about a Mel Chapel story, and because you're interested in strange things. But I don't want to go on that right now. Okay. But anyway, so this is Mel Chapel had said where he came into a space and then Earth again and then another space and how high it was. Okay. And then Dad found the same thing but at a different height on the other side of the money pit. So common sense says, well, they were joined together and that was a spiral tunnel and the walkway to an underground something. So, because we're talking at the very bottom of the money pit now, we're talking about 120 feet or more.
So there's actually a spiral walkway that's around the money pit.
Yeah, it's like a ramp.
Right. See
and
that?
If you got my book, it's in the book. There's a sketch of it in the book.
Okay.
And I'm just...
Book's available on OppermanReportBlog.com.
Yeah, right.
You can find the book over there and check out this sketch. Maybe you go down there yourself and look at this.
I just opened my book. Yeah. It's down at the 100-foot level. It's below where the money pit. Oh, sorry. It's below where the inlet tunnel opens up at the money pit. You know where the water comes in from the sea?
Yeah.
It's just below that.
Now, I haven't seen anything about the spiral walkway that you're talking about. I haven't seen anything about that on YouTube or this TV show or anything like that.
Well, okay, and you probably haven't seen anything about the vertical shaft either because people just don't want to believe. I mean, there's people who know about Oak Island and they care about Oak Island and they believe what they believe and they don't want to hear anything else.
Right.
And these are things my dad did. No, my mom and my dad, and Bobby, like, when they all went back to the island and they worked, well, at one point when Dad and Bobby were working, they were so sure they were just about there that Dad bought a gun.
Oh, really?
And when I got the pictures and stuff from my dad, there were hundreds of pictures. They were not captioned. There was, a couple of hundred of color slides and just as many black and white snaps. And he's got like 30 or 40 pictures of airplanes or helicopters up there. Well, he was constantly being buzzed, So I'm sure he thought that the minute I find anything, somebody's going to swoop in here and take everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, my point is that the thing. Oh yeah, so they were very, very, very secretive about everything they did, and they told nobody, and that's why I had to write the book because, like, my mom on her deathbed told me that I had to write the book, or Ricky had to write the book, or we both had to write the book, but the Restall story had to be told, and I wasn't quite sure I could do it. I mean, I didn't know anything about Oak Island, and I only knew what I'd seen, and I didn't understand it at all. And I didn't, and I had all these boxes of letters and boxes of journals and all this stuff, and I'm trying to reconstruct it, but it's hopeless. And I just thought, like maybe this is one of those presents. I mean, hey, she gives me her book to write when I'm 70 years old. I've never written a book. So I'm starting to talk myself into, I don't need to do this job. This is too much to ask. And then I saw a write-up in one of the magazines that essentially said my father had done nothing on that island for all those years, just wasted the opportunity, and that, in fact, someone else had been running his show for the last 6 months on the island, which was all lies, absolute lies. The person they were referring to had not even met my dad until something like 3 weeks before the accident. So anyway, that got me to write the book. I had to write the book then.
Before we get too much into that, let's take another little commercial break because we got to make some money. We got to pay the bills here.
Oh, I'll do that. Yes.
It's not like I'm sitting on buried treasure like you are. I got to feel it. Wait, let me ask you a question. You saying you have boxes of letters and all kinds of stuff and paperwork still today?
Yes.
And no one's come along and offered you any money for that?
No, but maybe we should have an auction.
Where do you live?
Where do I live? I live in planet Earth.
I'll come find you.
Canadian version.
Okay, listen, we'll be right back after this. We got Lee Lamb, who's just a delightful woman, man. Really a fascinating story. What a life, man. You grew up at the carnival. Your father's parents are circus performers, motorcycle daredevils, treasure hunters. How can you beat a life like that, man? I tell you, that would be the life for me. And she's the author of Oak Island Obsession, The Restall Story, and another book called Oak Island Family, The Restall Hunt for Buried Treasure. And there's links to both of these books on the Opperman Report blog. So we'll be right back after this. We're going to take a nice little break.
You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York.
If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. These 100% therapeutic-grade oils help support the body's natural functions. You can click on her website, posted on Essentially Tammy, that's T-A-M-I, to see the current deals and check out the benefits of oils such as frankincense, joy, valor, lemon, thieves, panaway, and many more. Email Jocotami, that's Jocatami, @yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. That's 352-239-8546. Hey, don't forget good old Amanda at Pacific West Bamboo. Pacific West Bamboo, 503-839-8126. You can reach her at demroots@oppermail.com. Pacific West Bamboo, your #1 source for timber, construction, and craft-grade bamboo poles, plants, products, and more. They specialize in eco-friendly reclaimed wood products for the home and garden. They're located in Portland, Oregon, servicing the Northwest for over 10 years. They can be reached at 503-839-8126. That's 503-839-8126. Her Facebook page is Pacific West Bamboo. They can and do ship nationwide, and they're currently getting a new line of bamboo flooring, veneers, and laminates made from Guadawa bamboo, one of the world's strongest bamboos, grown and produced and manufactured in Central America using only economically and environmentally friendly practices and standards. Good old Mike Gray at infinityhomeplans.com. Check out Infinity Home Plans and Design Services, your resource for 3D and 2D draftsman services. They offer a multitude of products, including stock home plans, 2D digital drawings, 3D models, renderings, and more. That's infinityhomeplans.com. Hey, don't forget emailrevealer.com. That's my website, emailrevealer.com. And we offer all different kinds of services. Current place of employment locate. Let's say you're trying to locate where your ex-husband or your ex-wife is working so you can collect on child support. You contact us, we can locate their place of employment for you and help you collect on that child support. Let's say you think that your husband or your wife is cheating on you. Give us their email address and we can trace it back to online dating websites and dating services. So we have a multitude of services on emailrevealer.com. Hey, don't forget the New World Mexican Mexican Women. Okay, now you just Google New World Mexican Women. You can find their book where they first describe their love letters to their men and their sons and their uncles and their brothers who have traveled from South America to North America to work as migrant workers. But the women down in this town there in Guerrero, Mexico, they want their men to come back. So they've written these beautiful love letters, and they've put them all in this beautiful coffee table book. First, the letters are written in Spanish, handwritten. You can see pictures of the people writing the books. And then it comes on after that, and it's typewritten in English. And then also, too, the second half of the book is teaching you how to make authentic Mexican jewelry from these New World Mexican Women. You can find their book on lulu.com. It's only $19, or you can download the digital edition for free. That's New World Mexican Women, and it's a two-part book where first part is the love letters, and the second part is the making the handmade jewelry, the authentic Mexican jewelry. But you can also contact them, too, as well, if you want to get a deal on wholesale jewelry from Mexico, from these women. Hey, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Treasure Hunter Ed Opperman. I have given up my career as private investigator. I am now going to be the Treasure Hunter Ed Opperman. This show is brought to you by Audible.com, the Treasure Hunter site, audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. You go there, you sign up for free, you get a free audio book that helps support the show. Hey, and don't forget, you can find this show and last week's show and all the shows are on the archives. It's up on the Opperman Report YouTube channel. It's on Spreaker.com, and it's also on iHeartRadio.com that you can find all these shows. And I just had a little talk with Lee Lamb off the air, and she said she's willing to stay a little bit longer, do a little bit of after show with us, and take some phone calls. So you can give us a call at 702-605 4894, or Skype me on ed.opperman. So now, Lee, where'd we leave off? We left off...
Well, we had been talking about the spiral tunnel.
Right.
And I just wanted... You mentioned that you had never heard of it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to put one little link in there. That's one of the pieces that the reality show was good enough to understand, to understand the implications of that. You know, that my dad had discovered this spiral tunnel, and it came out of the journals and records that we had. Anyway, that was one thing I wanted to pick up on, and I did tell you I was going to tell you a little bit of other worldly stuff, but there's a lot of talk. I mean, you have to admit that far more bad things have happened to people that went there with good faith and bankrupted themselves, I might say, doing it too, all through Oak Island's history. And that when Mel Chapman owned the island, and his dad had dug on the island, and Mel Chappell is the one who let my dad go on. And when Mel Chappell, after the war, took his try at going after the treasure, and I think he was in partnership with Blair, I'm not sure, or Hedden, maybe, I can't remember. But anyway, they brought a big, you asked about big earth movers, well, they brought one over, except that it fell in Mahone Bay on the way over.
Oh, really?
So they had to bring another one over. But there's just been so much bad luck for people digging for treasure, you have to wonder if somebody isn't looking out for the island.
Well, yeah, also, too, when you hear these stories about the treasure hunters and the pyramids and stuff like that, too, that there was curses of the Sphinx and stuff when they open up these, that the treasure hunters down there would die as well, you know? There's something to that, I guess, right?
Oh, I believe that. I mean, I believe there's a lot we don't know anything about.
Yeah.
And there's some really strong powers out there. And I'm not sure what they emanate from, but I do know they're there.
So fascinating. Okay, so we got where'd we leave off then? Let me ask you a question, kind of going off in a different direction. Now, there was one thing on the TV show.
Yeah.
That they showed you bringing over some paperwork and giving it to them as a gift. What'd you give them?
Oh, I gave him a map that my brother had made. That's of the end of it's the Money Pit end of the island.
Okay.
And he had made it up, and I don't know the name of the term for how, I don't know if it was lithography or what, but there was no original. The printer kept the original, and Bobby just went in and got copies when he wanted, because Reader's Digest had run an article in Christmas at just before 1965 started, Christmas 64, and it appeared in some of them in 1 week, and in the others it appeared. Other parts of the country got it at a different time. But anyway, it was about Oak Island, and it is the article that got Dan Blankenship interested, and Rick Lagina, and many, many, many other people. My parents were practically buried in letters. What did you ask me? Why am I talking about this?
Don't remember either. No, I was asking about what paperwork you had.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, right. Okay. So they got so many letters, and everybody was telling them how they should do the work. Yeah. But they were so off base, they didn't understand anything. Like, you dig a hole around the money pit, all the way around the money pit, yeah. And about 20 feet out, and anyway, it was crazy stuff. And Bobby said, I'm going to get a map out there so people can see what's in relation to what. And then after that, when people wrote in and wanted anything, because people often did, he offered to sell them the map. And it was on a soft craft paper, and it was, about 2 feet by 18 inches or something like that. And he sold it for $1 in a tube mailed to them.
Oh, my God.
My dad was adamant that nobody was like that. I remember saying to Dad, gee, there's so many tourists here in the summer. You could open up a pop stand. And he said, yes, but we're here to dig for treasure, and we want no misunderstanding that we're not here just to make money off some other aspect of this. And the same with the map. I'm sure Bobby barely covered his costs, but anyway, that's that.
No,
so I also showed Rick at the table that was the real actual journal that Bobby had written, and he had just gone. He had taken a day off and gone racing, and he won 2 firsts, and it was stock car racing.
Okay,
and Bobby had developed, even though he only got off one night a week out of work. He left the island, but he developed a really rich social life for himself in that one night a week with a lot of people, and he did things, and he got a stock car race going, the car going, and this time he first let somebody else drive it, but anyway, he'd now reached the point where he went racing, and he got 2 firsts that day, and he never ever wrote anything personal in the thing, well, except once when he mentioned that they banged the car up, and he said Dad was driving. So anyway, Bobby had written 2 firsts, and then the date was written for the next. He obviously wrote his entry and then put the date for the next day, and then he went back and wrote an entry and date for the next day, and the next day was the day they died, so there was no entry.
Now, what happened with that? How did this accident happen?
Oh, okay.
No, wait, I'm confused for a second. Now, Bobby's your brother?
Yeah, Bobby's my brother. He's 6.5 years younger. He was 6.5 years younger than I. He was 18 when he went to the island, but they were there almost 6 years, so he was 23 or 24 when he died. I guess 24.
I'm so sorry,
Yeah,
24 years old. Yeah, what a
Well, yeah, and the best years of your life have been digging holes with your father on the beach. But he wanted to do it. he was really determined. Like, he really believed in my dad.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so you were asking about the accident.
Yeah.
Well, this was about 2 to 3 weeks before that. Dunfield had wanted to invest in Dad's treasure hunt, and he wanted to put in $5,000. And but he had one condition: he wanted some bulldozing done on the beach, and then he would release his money. So the bulldozer was working on the beach, and Dad was to go to the bank and sign the papers. And he had to get to the bank pretty soon because it was, half an hour or 3/4 of an hour until bank closing time. And they had been working on clearing out a shaft, a beach shaft, where he digs one down 24 or 30 feet or whatever, looking for the shut-off valve, looking for the inlet tunnel so they could shut it off.
Okay.
And they had just reopened this hole. It's one they had used earlier. And I even have a film of that day with the bulldozers working and doing the beach, and then scraping up behind the beach cabin to the recently opened up shaft they're going to use again. And that day, Bobby was working with three young men, and clearing brush, like twigs and stuff, from the beach, cleaning it up, and burning it in a big drum. And on that day, Dunfield was on the island, and so was Carl Grazer, who was another American who he invested heavily with Dad, and he was a great guy. Anyway, Bobby looked up, and he saw my dad checking the shaft, the beach shaft that they were going to start working in, and it was being pumped out right now, like the water out of the shaft. And this shaft was behind the beach cabin, so it was a bit up the hill, going to that 32-foot plateau I told you about.
Okay.
Anyway, so Bobby looks up, and there's Dad looking down into that to see how the pumping's going, and Dad tumbled in the hole and tumbled into that shaft. And Bobby dropped the brush and ran over and climbed in, like there's a ladder coming out of it, climbed down a couple of rungs, and he fell in too. And then behind him, I've just got to gather myself together here.
Okay.
After Bobby, Carl Grazer, the millionaire from the States, Long Island, I think, rushed over and went down, and he fell too. And then Cyril Hiltz, one of the young boys, local boys, went in after them, and then Andrew Demont went in, and Leonard Kaiser. And they were essentially stacked like cordwood.
All six of them?
Yeah, in the hole, but Leonard Kaiser got out.
Okay. I
don't know how he got out. I have never spoken to him. But anyway, and he is still alive.
Okay.
But a Buffalo fireman was on the island with his family and other friends. There were two couples, I think, and kids. And he put a handkerchief around his face and went down. I mean, his wife begged him not to do it, but he did go into the pit and went down and had someone able to hoist him.
Right.
His friend, I presume. Well, there was other men anyway, the bulldozer operator and everybody. And he was able to get Andrew Demont and pull him up. And Andrew was passed out cold, but he was wrapped around a strut that went across the shaft, so he didn't fall to the bottom.
Gotcha.
But later he told me that he had, as he fell and hung on to that pole, or at least that strut, that wooden beam, he looked down and he saw just the top of Carl Grazer's head above the water, and he saw my brother's shoulders and head holding my dad's head, his dad's chin above the water.
Oh.
And then he passed out. He didn't remember anything.
Because there was a gas?
Yeah. It's, I forget what it's called now.
Methane?
No, nitrous. Oh, it's hydrogen sulfide.
Okay.
It's H2S, as in Sam, or sulfide.
Right.
Anyway, it's something that is made when you have rotting vegetation and salt water. And this happened to be the very site of the most delicious apple tree on the island. And one of the locals told me, well, it must have been partly salt water and partly fresh water for it to live, because everybody says that those make the tastiest apples down here. So anyway, that was the spot. That was the spot of the apple trees, and that was the spot of the gas that took their lives. And after I wrote the book, several people wrote to me and told me what it was, what the gas was, and how notoriously lethal it is.
Really?
The firemen went and visited Andrew Demont in the hospital, and Leonard Kaiser was there too, and the fireman said that when he got to Andrew, he was out cold, and he had been out cold. I don't know how the fireman knew that, but he said he'd been out cold for around 2 hours, and that Andrew just punched him. It was all he could do to get Andrew out of there, because Andrew just, even though he seemed to be unconscious, he was fighting. He fought the firemen as he tried to bring him out. And then my mom and I never talked about Oak Island after that. I mean, after everybody died, and my mom lived to 90, but it just wasn't anything we ever talked about. And
so what happened with her? She moved off the island and did what?
She moved off the island and lived in a small house within the site of the island. She could see it from her living room. And she went to business college and became a secretary, and her family doctor hired her, and then she learned bookkeeping, and she became the office manager, and she taught night school at 2 different schools, or at least 2 nights a week, and she and Rick lived there for a while, and then Ricky moved to Ottawa. But she stayed there until she often thought of coming to Ontario, but she didn't. She stayed there, and one day I was visiting her. I visited her every summer once I got to be a teacher. And then it suddenly occurred to me, like, but all those bodies were down there. How did they get them out if it was so toxic? And she said, I don't know. And she said, I think I've been told that Jimmy Kaiser was part of that. And so we decided we'd go and ask them.
They did get the bodies out.
Yeah, they got the bodies out. Jimmy Kaiser, they left it to the local volunteer fire department to bring them up. And they didn't have any correct equipment at all. They had World War I gas masks.
Wow.
And they were going to put a grappling hook in my dad. And anyway, Mom and I went to Jimmy Kaiser's house, and he happened to be there, and he was it was as if he'd been waiting to be asked forever, you know. And he told us all about it. And he had been lowered and did what he could do, and then he was getting dizzy too, and they brought him up for a while, but nobody else wanted to go down. I think one fellow tried, but he just got down about a foot, and he said, "Not for me." And so Jimmy did the job of bringing the bodies up, and he said that his wife washed his clothes. They stunk a rotten egg smell. Wow. And washed his clothes for a whole year, and the smell never came out.
But Jimmy Kaiser was the guy who owned the place, right?
No, he didn't own.
Oh no, okay.
It's Mel Chappell who owned the island.
Right. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
But Jimmy Kaiser did what? What was he had a high position there, right?
Oh, he was one of the guys who worked for us and went down and drilled in the money pit in the wintertime when the pump was running, so that, you know, he was one of the ones that was working for us.
Okay, he was just a worker that was really loyal to your dad and your brother and stuff like that.
Yeah, what the hell, really, really wonderful people, you know, like a lot of really good people have been involved in this, and he was one of them. He was great.
Oh my God!
I got a picture of Jimmy Kaiser arriving out of the money pit after a day's work, you know, in the wintertime.
And that had to be some incredible work too, man. You can just imagine working all day down in a big giant hole.
Right, exactly. With water coming in and being pumped out at 500 gallons a minute, and then, I mean, there was a collapse of one of the tunnels while my parents were there, and it's a miracle that there weren't more collapses because, True. As I said, it's like Swiss cheese. And now, I mean, they're going to dig. I mean, I'm just, as I say to you, I don't know what the reality show is going to do. I'm not part of that loop, but the last show I saw, they were going to go down the money pit, and in the meantime, the island has kind of been decapitated at that part of the island. So the money pit starts 20 feet lower than it used to. And it's, in other words, it's 12 feet above sea level now. And When my dad was there, it was 32 feet above sea level. And so I think they'll probably find that water is still a problem.
I bet they will. Okay, listen, let's take a little break here. We had to take another commercial break. And Lee Lamb has offered very kindly to stay with us a little bit longer and take some phone calls and questions from the audience. If you want to call in, 702-605-4894, or you can Skype in at ed.opperman. And all the usual callers are welcome to call in. And the wonderful lady here, Lee Lamb, this is a fascinating story. And it's a personal story, too. You know, this is a tragic, you know, you lose your brother, you lose your father, you lose your friends and stuff like that. So she's very kind to share this story with us. And I thank you, Lee. And we'll be right back after this commercial break.
You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York.